Yeah. I was just telling him my parents live in Grinnell.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. I went to a little school right outside there called Linville South.
Oh, sure. I know
Sully
Linville Sully, yeah.
So
Good basketball teams in the past.
They it was when I was there actually. They had some girls basketball teams that won I think 3 state titles in a row.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah,
Wow!
in,
Wow!
1A. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Now I was telling Mike, we can pretty much use whatever pictures are in the book. Or,
I mean, you're free to use certainly. From my point of view, you're free to use anything in here. I don't necessarily have rights to all of it. Some of them I got off of friends. Like this photo I took.
Okay.
So the only ones I think that probably would be a little bit more questionable are there are 3 in here. See, these are all ones that I took from various things. The ones that I would see, this one, which is on the cover. The one on the cover, this one. The one against this one against Notre Dame, and
these are not yours.
Actually, that might be it. Those are the University of Iowa's.
Okay.
And so
maybe I have to courtesy them.
So you might have to courtesy them. Would be. But again, I can't. There's a guy in Clinton, Gary Harrity.
No more. He died.
He passed away.
Last summer.
Okay, there you go.
July.
I had some really good conversation with him about Duke Slater, and he provided some of these pictures.
Oh, okay.
So obviously, and they say right on the, they say right in the here
and I can talk to his widow.
It says right here in the caption, courtesy Gary.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is, like I said, this one is courtesy University of Iowa for grant services.
Okay.
So there were, but those might be the only 2 actually. Now that I think about it.
Most of what we're going to end up getting because of the way things operate at the television station, and Mike knows this.
Yeah.
Most of this will be shot in one day.
Of course.
So whatever we can get access to at Clinton High School, and then, being able to talk to you. We do these feature stories 5 days a week.
Right.
And they're usually about a minute and 45 seconds, and then there's some chit-chat back. But I've done it. I've got at least a half dozen with Mike.
Right.
Mike was an outstanding swimmer.
Right.
Clinton High School.
Okay.
Well, not as outstanding as my brother. My brother's in the swimming hall of fame.
I know it. But you come from good bloodlines, and he's just a brilliant man in terms of the history that he knows of the area. So we're going to work on this together.
That's great.
I think we're doing a story in February, aren't we, Mike?
Yeah, you were going to February 6th, I think, if I remember correctly.
And then I just got word the other day that our executive producer wants me to run this on the 4 o'clock newscast on the same day that Sharon DeReek is running one about the Underground Railroad at 5 o'clock.
Oh.
So they want to tie these stories, Neal, in with Black History Month.
Do you want to see the house in Clinton that's reputed to be a stop in the Underground Railroad as part of your visit?
I'd love to,
Any other time? Yeah, and I know the owners of the house. So.
Oh. You said Mrs. Harrity is still alive?
Oh, yeah. She's very much alive and kicking and very nice. So I know her quite well. So.
Would she have access to any of these pictures, do you think?
Oh, yeah. I can call her now if you want. By the way, I'm running.
Oh, you are? Okay. Okay. Well, I'm probably just going to use this for informational purposes because of the music and stuff.
Yeah, I understand.
I guess maybe, and I asked this on behalf of Mike too. What are some of your reasons for wanting Duke Slater to be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame?
Well, I think first and foremost is that he's deserving. I mean, that's to me.
Well, it was an injustice that he didn't get chosen then.
It was. The
absolutely. U.S. has moved on since then.
Yeah.
And so now it's time to try and rectify that.
Yeah.
If I may interject.
100%. I mean, his not being in the Pro Football Hall of Fame is a lot of it's just sort of circumstance as much as anything. I think I was telling you before about the seniors pool. His only route to get in at this point is through a seniors pool. The Pro Football Hall of Fame was started in 1963. So Duke Slater had already been retired from the NFL for 3 decades at that point. And the way that the Pro Football Hall of Fame worked early on was they just put out the list of here are the people who were in. Like they just got together, they voted, and they said here's the list. So when you look at some of the old articles back in those days, in the 60s, it would say here are some of the strong candidates to get in. And if you look at those lists, they would list 6 guys, and all of them are in except Duke Slater. He was the one guy who's, and interestingly enough, they'd list 5 great white players and then Duke Slater. And the 5 white players are all in, and Duke Slater's still waiting. So, he was considered a strong candidate in the 60s. And then in 1970 and 71, they kind of tweaked the process a little bit. They released a list of finalists. And then from that list, they put in the Hall of Fame, they selected the group. Duke Slater was a finalist in 1970 and 1971, which were the first 2 years that they did that. He's the only person who was a finalist in 70 and 71 who's not in. There were, I think, half a dozen players who were finalists both of those years. They're all in, except Slater. So my belief is he would have been a finalist. He would have continued being a finalist year after year until he eventually got in. But in 1972, they tweaked the process again. And again, what they did was they created a seniors pool. They said if you've played prior to a certain amount of time, then we'll pick 1 candidate a year, which they expanded now to 2 candidates a year. We'll pick 1 or 2 players from that era, and then all the other finalists will have a separate process for the modern people, which they still have. They pick, I think, 5 modern people is what they vote on. Long story short, Slater got put into the seniors pool in 1972, and he's never been nominated from the seniors pool.
It's a complicated process.
Who does the nominating?
It's a group of 40 people who are on the Hall of Fame. They're all sports writers, 1 from each NFL city, 2 from New York because they have 2 teams, and then like 8 at-large people who do sort of national NFL coverage. So it's these 40 people who, I think it's 40, it may have gone 44, but I think it's 40. And they're the ones who vote on the Hall of Fame. The seniors process is actually a subset of those 40, and it's only like 9 people. And those 9 generally have, at least in theory, stronger expertise in that era and the history of the NFL as far as that goes. Now the problem that you have is, because as I mentioned, the seniors pool is anybody who played from or retired between 1920 and 1970. I mean, it moves every year. It's 1 year up every year. So I think this late 70s by now. So that encompasses 6 decades in the NFL. The problem that you have is these selectors, when they're picking someone from 1920 through the 1970s, they almost always pick someone from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. They pick it from the early era because, number one, that's what they're familiar with. Like a lot of these older players, they saw players who played in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, or their contemporaries are still alive. The players from the 20s, 30s, and 40s, they're older, they're deceased, the people who saw them play are deceased, and they believe, I think, mistakenly, that anybody who deserved to get in from the 20s, 30s, and 40s should already be in by now. I mean, that's their logic.
Well, if he's a white player, that's probably the case.
Exactly true. Well, and also, if you look at the 20s, 30s, and 40s, there are only about 2 really egregious omissions, and Duke Slater's one. There's another player who played for the Green Bay Packers, who I would say, Vern Dilwick is his name.
Now,
he's also a pretty egregious omission. But it's really just those 2 who you say, these guys should be in, but they just were forgotten. They just sort of got lost in the shuffle a little bit.
you say that the sports writers are the people who do the nominating?
Yes, yes.
I have a cousin who's on the editorial board of the Chicago Tribune, and I also know the architectural guy at the Chicago Tribune. Maybe I should make contact with them to say, hey, are you aware?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Chicago, the fact that he played in Chicago is big. I mean, because there should be contacts in Chicago who, at least in theory, should really embrace his legacy because of what he did in that city, not only as a player but then afterwards in law. What's difficult is, and I've approached some of these 9 people who are on this committee, and several of them, they don't want to be contacted by fans. They know, we know what we need to know. But some of them are very open to it, and they understand he's got a good case, and they agree that he has a good case. The problem is, they'd argue that about a dozen people have a good case, and it's when do you finally say it's your turn? Like, it's very easy to be able to say, well, we're going to pick this guy and this guy, and when you look at the 2 people that they do pick, they're not undeserving. It's just Duke Slater's deserving, and he's been waiting he's been since the 20s. So it gets to be a difficult political process where you say, not only is he deserving, but let's do it now. And I think to the point that I made earlier, if you look at the seniors nominees, who they've chosen over the years, going back to 1980, they have only once, 1 year, nominated someone from the 20s, 30s, pre-World War II. They've only done it once since the 80s. Almost every time since the 80s, with one exception, have they gone back to the 1920s, 30s, pre-World War II to pick a player. So that shows you just how skewed they are toward 50s, 60s, 70s players.
Tell us a little bit about Duke Slater, the man. What do you think, aside from his athletic ability, which is well documented in your book, this man was very unique from the standpoint that I think he went back and got a law degree. He became a judge in Chicago who was very well respected. What else do you want us to know about Duke Slater, Neal, aside from Duke Slater, the athlete?
Oh, yeah. That's the amazing part about Duke Slater is it is much more than athletics. I think when you look at an African-American athlete at that time, the idea is that the stereotype was that they're not intelligent, was that they weren't overly bright. Basically, all their athletic gifts were in their strength and speed, and not using their intellect. And you saw that in the NFL where they were hesitant to put black athletes in positions of quarterbacks or middle linebackers where they would have to think.
Decision makers, yeah.
And Duke Slater in that era really defied that with how intelligent he was. I mean, on the field as an athlete, he diagnosed plays and he was very, very sharp in that way. But then also, what he did with his law degree, he would go back. It's a tremendous thing. He went back in his off seasons. He was playing in the NFL. He would play in the NFL, and then when the NFL season was done, he'd go back in the off season and take law classes. And in fact, there was a time when he was in Rock Island in 1925. He would go back to Iowa City, take law classes early in the week, and then come back and play in an NFL game on Saturday or Sunday. So he'd come back and play in an NFL game on the weekends, but during the week he'd go back to Iowa City to take law classes. So he graduated from the College of Law in 1928, one of the first black graduates of the College of Law. Started up a law practice the next year, passed the Illinois bar in 1929. Started a law practice while he was in the National Football League, his final couple of years, and then became a very prominent attorney on the South Side before becoming a judge, and he had a very, very successful career as a judge as well.
Tell us a little bit about Duke Slater, the humanitarian. What was he like as a person?
Yeah.
Very well liked, as I understand.
Everyone thought he was such a tremendous gentleman. Like, that was how they described him. They described him as a gentleman because he was a very fair person. He was a very, toward the end of his career, they were trying to shut African American players out. For most of the late 1920s, he was the only black player in the entire National Football League. And part of the reason why he was able to remain was because of his talent. He was extremely good. Also, he was a lineman. But, it was his natural humility. Like, he did not take the spotlight off of other players. He would play in these games with the Chicago Cardinals, and he'd open up these huge holes for Ernie Nevers. Ernie Nevers was first ballot Pro Football Hall of Famer, an all-time legend. he would open up these holes for Ernie Nevers, and Ernie Nevers would get all the headlines, and he'd get all the publicity and everything else. And that's, Duke Slater did not argue, he didn't upset the apple cart in that way at all. He was all about that. If you went to him and you talked about, his successes on the football field, he would just smile and say, "Oh, well, I was just doing my best." That was one of his quotes. I just did the best I could. Big smile. But everyone else would say, "Man, this guy was amazing," but you'd never hear that from him. And that kind of humility was unusual, and also, I think that is one of the reasons why, sadly, I think that ties into one of the reasons why he's been overlooked for the Hall of Fame, because there were other players who said, "I was great." They were quick to remind people of how great they were in their playing days. And Duke Slater was not one of those people. He was very humble, and he'd always give the credit to others. And and in that way, he was sort of classic lineman, where he just sort of deflected the credit. And I think it actually wound up hurting him in terms of this process, but it's one of the things that I think made him so special.
And oftentimes played both ways, right?
Mm-hmm. He did play both ways the entire time. It was when you played back then, it was single platoon, so you played on both sides of the ball. He played right tackle on offense, and then he played defensive end on defense. But he was also a guy who played all 60 minutes. So on special teams, if they were punting, he was a gunner who'd run down and chase down the punter, and on kickoffs he would block. And he had several years, I think it was 4 seasons in a row, I think his entire time in Rock Island, when he played for the Rock Island Independence, from 1922 through 1926. He played all 60 minutes of every single game for 5 years in national football. And there were players who played 60 minutes, but to do it game after game after game for a full season, and then to do it for 5 years in a row, that was unheard of.
Did he wear a helmet in the National Football League?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, he wore a helmet in the NFL. He was. It's funny. He didn't wear it in high school, as I'm sure you know the stories. He didn't wear it in high school. In college, because he had to pay for it. In college, they offered him one, but he didn't want to wear it. He's like, I don't want to wear a helmet because it interferes with my vision, and I'm used to playing without it. Kind of an interesting aside that a lot of people don't know about that is his coach at Iowa was Howard Jones, who was a disciplinarian. And Howard Jones's rule was, at the start of every game, everybody is in regulation uniforms, they're ready to go. At opening kickoff, everybody's 100%. So Duke Slater would wear a helmet at Iowa for the opening kickoff, for the very first play. And then once Iowa tackled the ball carrier, if they were kicking off or if they had a return or whatever, first play, they're getting ready for the first real offensive or defensive play, Duke Slater would take his helmet, unclasp it, and throw it to the side. And fans at Iowa would wait for this. This was all right, it was like the opening fireworks of the game. They'd wait for Slater to just take his helmet and chuck it off. And that was what he did his first several years at Iowa. And then, of course, there's this great game against Notre Dame in 1921, his senior year, which is the most famous game he's known for. And they were beating him up bad. And, Hunk Anderson was the guy's name. So with the name Hunk Anderson, this was the one
He
tough
was a big side of
son
beef.
of a gun. He was a tough son of a gun. He played for Notre Dame, and he was ferocious. And later played for the Bears and some other teams. He was a really tough customer. He played for Notre Dame, and he would go after Duke Slater. He would the ball would be going the other direction, and he would be putting a pounding on Duke Slater. And finally, at one point in the game, Duke Slater said, "The ball's going the other way. Why do you keep coming after me?" And he said,